Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. I've got with me today Danny D. Brabander.
Brabander, close.
Got that right. Nobody gets my second name right. So. Danny, when I set up this podcast, and we're just talking about this a minute ago, when I set up this podcast, it was to share people's stories, and it was to open up, really, for people to understand or see what other people are going through. Right? Sometimes they think, oh, I'm going through exactly that. Sometimes you're going through something that they're absolutely not going with, but it'll apply some kind of perspective to what's happening in their daily routine. And that was the reason why I set it up. And another reason why I set it up was it's becoming ever more sort of prevalent that you need to show resilience. I'm not sure where it's going. We're going to actually talk a bit about like children's resilience. I'm not actually sure where that's leading to nowadays. But from an adult perspective, it's like you're going to take knocks in life and you need to be able to do your best to deal with them. So I've done about 100 podcasts now, but we've probably not had somebody like you on, which is why you're on. And thanks for reaching out to come on.
Thanks for having me on.
We're going to talk about living with cancer. We're going to talk about we'll talk about your whole journey, really, what it was like before, what it's been like since, how you've dealt with it, how your mindset has dealt with it, how other people around you've supported, how you've supported them.
Yeah.
Because, there's not just you affected by this. And it's, I'm really grateful for you to coming on for a start. Let's just get stuck straight into it. Talk to me first, though, about your about childhood and like what your dreams and what you wanted to be and what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I was born on the Wirral and pretty much lived there my whole life, really. And growing up, I had a good family around me. I got a brother, Simon, and yeah, it was always the usual thing with kids, just going to school. But I was always driven by football. Believe it or not, with my accent, I'm a Manchester United fan, which probably come off the back of being a bit of a glory hunter when they were getting good in the 90s. But yeah, and then it was just going through school, and it's funny. I never, obviously, as you do, you have the aspirations to be a footballer or these big dreams and so on. But as it happened, went through college, and then. I kind of fell into a job in insurance at the time. Did a few years of that. Did quite well at it. Got headhunted for a place in Chester. I was only young, very much the youngest person there. And it kind of felt like everything was coming together. And then I met a girl called Lacey, and I was on holiday in America, and ended up moving again, just completely left field. Ended up moving to Las Vegas for a year. So yeah, and then unfortunately, I had a bit of a sad ending to it. I come back to sort out visas and to move there permanently. And when I was back, she was sadly killed in a car accident at the time. So we were engaged to be married as well at such a young age, and that kind of threw everything in the window. And
you were in mid-20s then?
Yeah, around about 23, 24, and that was the first time I ever really had any sort of, because my childhood was just very steady, and no dramas, and then all of a sudden, bang, your first kind of bit of adversity in life, really, and that took me quite a good few years to come through.
Yeah,
and at the time, oddly enough, the job that I do now at Digital in telecommunications, Digital Group, was the job I got when I come back. It was only going to be a temporary thing for me before I would then eventually go back once the visa had gone through, and never returned, and still with Digital in telecommunications this day. 15 years on.
That first piece of adversity, again, it's a tragic one, right? It's as big a scale of adversity probably as you can find. How did you deal with that in your mid-20s?
Probably not very well, to be honest with you. I mean, through my life, I've lost like my nan and granddad and family members. After that, I'm one of them people where I don't really go through a grieving process. It was more it was more like the moving on in terms of finding another partner. I always had Lacey on a pedestal, which is rightly so, but it took me a good 5-6 years before I met my current partner Jane, who I work with through Digital, and met through Digital, that I actually then eventually started to move on. But yeah, probably not well, but it wasn't anything where somebody from the outside looking in would see that. They would probably think you're fine.
Yeah.
But deep down there was obviously underlying issues. I went through a lot of stuff in terms of, I think it had impact on me having anxiety. There was like a fear of death, because obviously somebody so young, you can see that happening. And as I say, that was all going on in the background, and it's a lot of it's around men's mental health, where you deal with it quietly, not, and that happens today. Too many people are trying to do it all themselves and deal with themselves instead of speaking out. Yeah. And it was only when I got with Jane and we spoke, and I've been able to move on from that and past it, really.
Yeah. Talked about a fear of death then, and I was telling you in the room just before we came on that my grandfather became my father figure, if you like, or my role model, male role model, and he passed away when I was 12, I think. And ever since then, I've had that kind of, when I look back and I got anxiety in my late 20s, the anxiety was fed off a speed of looking forward to live life to its maximum, live life to its fullest, because of, didn't really understand this at the time. This is looking back now at a 40-odd-year-old, looking back at a 20-odd-year-old with anxiety and wondering where it came from. I think it stemmed from losing my granddad at the age of 12 and not being able to show him subsequently. And I guess sometimes I'm still living that every day to showcase, really, and hope that there's someone he's out there and he can see what I became. But it, as I said to you earlier again, it didn't manifest itself well, because what actually happened was I was a general, what some people from the outside would look in was think I was a business warrior, or a warrior in constant 18-hour days, constant need for succeeding. And it was driving me towards a place of anxiety. Yeah. And it did. And it resulted in a lot of panic attacks and all the rest of it in my late 20s. So, you mentioned that fear. Was there anything that was life-changing for you from a perspective at that time?
I was like kind of subconscious one, in like you're saying there now, the brain is such a crazy thing, really, in that Lacey died in a car crash. My granddad died. He was picking my mum up to go to a football match, and he had a heart attack. He basically beeped his horn, had a heart attack in the car, slumped over the wheel, and when she come out, she found him. And what triggered me with anxiety was a very strange one. It wouldn't be so much on a general road, but if I'd get onto a motorway and I'd be in obviously the 3 lanes and I'd be on the far right lane, I'd all of a sudden have a panic attack that I was trapped. I was in the fast lane, the car's going X speed, and that's kind of how it manifested. It showed it to me in a physical manner, and it was all related to the car. And whether that, obviously, when you think back, obviously, if Lacey's passed away, my granddad's car related, it's quite natural that will be a trigger that comes off. But that's kind of how it manifested for me, in terms of physical anxiety, which took me a long time. It was only by me constantly putting myself into the circumstance or into that situation time and time again that I eventually overcome it, really.
And then, so your early 30s, you're working for the business that you joined. Yeah. Sales manager there, or
that's it. Yeah.
And you meet your current partner. So what's that like from your early 30s to, I don't know, for the next 5 years or so?
Just very comfortable. Like, I was doing well in as I say, the sales. I had a team of people there. We were doing well from a commercial point of view. I do sometimes think, when I look back now, and especially with what's going on, I sometimes think, and most people will, there's been years where, years will pass by and you'll float and you'll kind of think, what have I actually achieved in those years? And that's something I'm keen to kind of express to people, to always challenge yourself and to always try to be better. I know it sounds like a cliche, but the best version of you, because as I said, pre-cancer, I was very much, even though I was successful, could I have been more successful? What could have I done different? From a personal point of view, just very happy. It was just very much, family holidays, doing things we enjoyed.
What would you have done
Life
different?
was good.
What would you have done different?
I don't know, maybe, not to say I would have left digital, but there may have been career opportunities, other career opportunities. I think I settled in a role because I was comfortable at it. I was good at it, and that's not to say that's a bad thing. But then even if I focus it onto digital, could I have done more? Could the team have done more? Could we have grown in a different way? Or was I set in my ways? Did I allow the people around me to grow, or was I too? These are all questions that you ask when you try. You're refocusing yourself and so on.
Was you happy?
Yeah, I was happy. I mean, that's the core thing, I think that's the balance between finding happiness in your work life and personal life. So it's never been a point in my life where I'm not happy, but I think it's just natural to then say, because my mindset in terms of life is very different now. As I say, there's more of a because I don't know what's around the corner. There's more of a personal side of what can I achieve I want to be around my family and so on. So business is, whilst I'm still involved, it's not as prevalent in terms of my life as maybe what it was. So it's always natural to question and go back and say, well, what would I have done differently when I was normal, so to speak, and I didn't have all these health issues and concerns that I've got now.
Yeah. What were your sort of aspirations and goals back then? Can you remember?
Yeah, I mean, it was, as I said, there was maybe there could have been more, but it was more just, the company I work for is a family-run business.
Yeah.
My partner Jane, it's her father's company, so there was a lot of. It was just basically to grow the business and do well for him more than anything.
Yeah.
But that's where sometimes, and for the family, and sometimes I think to myself, was I selfish enough? Could I have gone on and done other things?
Yeah.
Or it's all natural things, really.
Yeah. So you're moving on in life. You get to the age of 38. Is it?
37, yeah.
37.
36, 37, yeah.
And then what happens?
So, as I say, my years was very much like your family holiday, like you have, and you know how it goes. And then with digital, we would have like a golf trip, a sales golf trip every year where we'd go over to Alicante. That normally happened around May time. Around April, May of 2018, my kind of journey, albeit I didn't know, with bowel cancer started, because I started to feel really unwell. I was getting a heavy sensation in my stomach. I was getting cramping in my stomach, feeling very lethargic, tired, oddly put weight on, where sometimes they say you lose weight, but just didn't feel myself, and went on these trips, family holidays, work trips. Obviously, with the work trips, there's a lot of drinking, and so you kind of putting it down to that. And it was just come back, and I just thought, I don't feel right. So around May time, like I said, I went to see the GP.
How long would you say that period was where you just didn't feel well, didn't feel right?
Probably about 3 months before I went to see the GP. And then once I went to see the GP, they said, well, the best bet is to go away for blood tests. And I just thought, you know what? And this is again why I'm so keen on awareness around bowel cancer and other cancers. Is I went away and I thought, you know what, I'm going to be fine here. It's a bit of IBS. I think I even looked on Amazon and got some. It was obviously affecting me that much. So I went on Amazon and I got some. Not that I'd recommend this, but some charcoal stuff that's supposed to clear out your bowels. And I was doing all mad stuff like that. And I thought, that's going to solve it. And then these trips happened. Didn't feel right. Come back, and then probably around August time of that year, I started to pass blood in my stool, and straight away I was like, that's not right at all. Again, probably sat on it for a month thinking it's going to pass. Yeah. And then eventually went back to the GP and said, look, I didn't have the blood test that you recommended. I went to, can we follow through? So I had the blood test, I had a stool sample. Both of those come back irregular. And then I was sent for a colonoscopy, which happened in the January of 2019. So all in all, you're probably looking a good 10 months. And I could even argue maybe a year, possibly more, of me not feeling right. But it's slowly, the symptoms slowly got worse. So a year of being undiagnosed. And as you'll see from the story, I often ask myself and say, what difference would that year make? I don't beat myself up, but I quite often say, if I'd have got in early, would the situation be different to where I am right now?
Yeah.
Really. So
Yeah.
so the key thing is if you've got any symptoms of any illness, get to your GP and get checked out and follow through on the tests, because
Yeah.
it's hugely important.
So January 2019, you get your test results back.
Yeah.
And what do they say?
So I went for a colonoscopy.
Yeah.
Oddly, they kind of turn you on one side and you can see a screen. And they were told me it would be about half an hour, the test. They got about 10 minutes in, and I saw it on the screen. There was like a growth, but again, naive, not thinking anything of it. He said like we couldn't get past the growth with the camera, so they come out and he put me into a side, put me into recovery. And then a lot of people who were coming out after me were getting let go early, and I said, well, I'm okay to go home. And he said, well, we're just going to wait for your partner to come up. And again, I not thinking about it. And then he called me into a room, and the guy who did the colonoscopy basically just said, like, from what we've seen on the scan, we believe that you've got bowel cancer. In fact, we're positive it is cancer, but we obviously need to take away a biopsy and confirm it. And I was very much just processed it like I was in a sales meeting. There was no real emotion. My mum had bowel cancer. She caught it early. I'd seen that she'd gone through a difficult time, but she'd had the operation and it was fine. So I was very upbeat. But then I was, as I say, they confirmed it was a few weeks later. And then I was sent for a CT scan and an MRI scan. And then I was actually in the Trafford Centre with my partner Jane, and got a call through. And they were like, can you come in next week? And I'm like, I don't want to wait till next week. I need to know now. And eventually she spoke to someone and come back and said, yeah, we'll tell you on the phone. And it was confirmed that the cancer had spread to my liver. So it was stage 4. And that was when it all become very real and very somber.
In that period from them kind of telling you to confirming it at the Trafford Centre, if you like, what's going on at that point? Are you almost pretending it's not there, even though they've told you? And how's your partner reacting to all this?
Yeah, I mean, we as I say, it wasn't. You never want to hear the words cancer. Yeah. You never want to hear that. But because we'd seen my mum deal with it, and it was like stage 2, and you think, we'll have the operation, we'll cut it out. Yeah, we'll be fine. Maybe a little bit of chemo just to be on the safe side. It was very much like there was a bit of, we were down, but not defeatist. But then when we got told it had gone to the liver, like I just remember us driving back from the Trafford Centre and we didn't speak a word, and like I had my Dr. Google out and I was looking liver metastases from bowel cancer, and it was like the average person lives for 6 months with this, and I was just like sitting there looking at it thinking, oh wow, this is like this is big, do you know what I mean? And so on, and we went straight to my mum and dad's, and the family come round and we had a big meeting, and it was like, we'll deal with this, but a lot of tears shed, and it was hard, and it was just, there was then that horrible wait before I could then go and see the oncologist and see what the plan of attack was really.
Yeah. And the feel is it when it hits you, what is it? Is it overwhelming? Is it, I don't know, fear of death? What?
It's the trigger.
The lack of control we talked about just before we came on.
Lack of control, but it's the thing of little things would trigger you. Like, so I've got a little niece, and Maisie, and little things with her would happen, and I'd start questioning whether I was going to see her grow up. So that would bring out upset. Like things with my partner, she got a son, Josh, and again it was just thinking, am I going to see him develop and grow? And there was so much to it where it's almost like the fear of missing out. You think is this Dr. Google right? Am I not going to be here in 6 months? And wow, how have I got to this? I was just Danny, lucky go happy, living my life, and now all of a sudden it's been absolutely turned on its head. And it was more, my thing was more how upset my family were getting by it. And that's one thing I've learned throughout the process, is they're a mirror and a reflection of me. So it's one of the main reasons why I got my mind into a positive mindset. Yeah. Because if I'm positive, they come along with me on the journey. Where if I'm reflecting bad and negative and this is doom and gloom and it's going to be horrendous, they come with me and they show it 10 times worse than I do.
And at this point again, the small stuff that we sweat every day, did that almost evaporate then? And the stuff that you don't, I was saying to you before again, you know, my little daughter's pulling on my leg and I'm like trying to get ready, or I'm trying to get in the car, and did you start to stop sweating the small stuff from that net that goes on negatively like pretty quickly and start embracing? Was that like a turning point or not?
It was not so much initially. It was initially it was just there was just so much focus on where we were and getting the plan in place and so on. But definitely since then it's become very much like prevalent. Like some people will say what they're worrying about and so on, and I'll be very much like, come on, it's not important. But at the same time, I never underplay. I was taking part in some mental health walks recently, and again, what a lot of people have always say to me is, "Oh, it's nothing compared to what you're going through." But I would never play that down. Some of these stresses in their life are their stresses. But sometimes to get a bit of clarity and focus and object, you know, to see what someone else is going through can also help you out, if you like. But just going back to that early point, not massively at the starting point, but it's definitely something that's grown over the years. Yeah.
So then the next part of your journey is?
So I went to see the oncologist, and it was fairly upbeat. He said, what we'll do is we'll give you a course of chemotherapy. The plan will be then to operate on your liver and bowel. And I was always told that when you've got cancer, the best way of getting rid of it is to actually have it cut out rather than chemotherapy, which can be hit and miss, really. So that was the plan of attack. I started to run and jog because I wanted to get myself into a good position. I had chemotherapy via like a cannulation, a drip, IV drip, and felt good the day. On the Saturday, it was park run, so I thought, you know, I'll get out and do park run. I was taking oral chemotherapy tablets as well. Felt a bit of the cold, but wrapping it up, went and done park run, come back, felt great. And then 2 to 3 days later, all of a sudden started to get this real dull ache in my arm, and my throat was just... So I spoke to the chemotherapy nurse and I said, like, look, I'm not feeling good here. She said, get up to emergency, accidents and emergency straight away and so on. And I went up and my heart rate was something ridiculous, like 190 or something. And they were rushing round. You know, when you first go in, it's quite calm and you do a few tests, and all of a sudden I was put into a room and they were all rushing round and he couldn't wait what was going on. And what had happened was, one of the chemotherapy drugs that I was on, I was actually cardiotoxic to it, so it caused problems with the heart, which when I was signing the disclaimer, they said there was about a 2% chance that was going to affect me. So it wasn't to do with me doing park run. It was the fact that I was basically allergic to the chemotherapy, and they basically said to me at that point, if I'd have waited possibly, you know, another 8 hours, I would have had a major heart attack. Caused by it, and thankfully I got in and they gave me the relevant medication, and 5 days later I was let out of hospital, and it tired me a lot for a good few weeks. But yeah, that was the first part of an eventful journey, and I didn't think it would get any worse than that, but it did.
So go and carry on.
So I went to see the oncologist, and they said chemotherapy's off the table now because obviously, you know, you're allergic to it, or that particular. So we'll just concentrate on getting the surgery booked in. So I was booked in for May. This was around the end of March. April come and so on. I started to get a heavy sensation again in my stomach. And I was thinking, you know, what's this? And it turned out that the cancer had grown in my bowel a bit, and it had blocked my bowel. So I ended up in hospital around mid-April. They said, what we'll do is, because surgery's so close in May, we'll do a routine stent. 1% chance it's going to go wrong. Great, okay. Bearing in mind the other percentage chances. So we'll put the stent in. It'll basically inflate your bowel, and then food can pass through and obviously get past the growth in your bowel. So went down onto the table. They put the stent in. took me away, put me into a holding area, and then just bang, the worst pain I've ever been in my whole life. I was screaming the place down, didn't feel like there was anyone around. And what had happened is the stent had blown up, but then perforated my bowel. So everything's leaking into my stomach, without being graphic. And I had to have emergency surgery. Again, the most painful experience of my life. I remember then getting taken down, and a memory of what I've got is mum and dad and Jane, and you go through into the doors of where they're basically going to do the operation, and there was a goodbye, and I remember texting a few people just saying I love you, and it was very much like, I don't know whether there was a gut feeling there was something not quite right going on. And then subsequently, obviously, I got put to sleep, and because all the stuff had leaked from my stomach, I'd contracted sepsis. And basically, my family were told that evening, called into a room and just said, like, all my organs were shutting down, and the chances of me making the evening were basically near on impossible, really. So you better prepare yourself for the worst. But thankfully, as you see me sitting here now, with the care of like the critical care team at Arrow Park on the Wirral, I managed to pull through. My organs recovered, and was in an induced coma for about 5-6 days, and then come round and it's possibly the worst part of this whole journey, really, because I went from that into, with the medication I was on, into a lot of delusions of grandeur. I was seeing things in the hospital. It was terrifying, really, what I was seeing, and I thought the hospital were out to get me. I thought I was in a fake hospital, and apparently this is a common occurrence of what you go through. But I went down to about 9 stone. I was 13 before that, and I had to learn to walk again, and the whole process was a real challenge. And I think I was in hospital for about 7-8 weeks.
Right. And can you remember those thoughts quite clearly, or is it a daze, or is it?
I can still see them now vividly, and it's one of them. A lot of people say apparently you get it with COVID as well, with the medication on with that, but what they say is it can actually haunt people throughout. But I think with me, is because I've had so much go on since then.
Yeah.
It's almost like that's just been parked.
Yeah.
But very, very, every now and again, I'll just have like a flashback in my mind to something that I saw. Like there was one night where I was, it just mad. I actually felt like I was in Dubai or somewhere, sat outside the hotel on a lounger with Jane, and I was saying to her, "It's a mild evening tonight, isn't it?" And we're in the hospital bed, and I think I'm in Dubai.
Yeah.
And that quickly evolved into, all of a sudden I was in the room, and where the window, there was like a mirror, which I thought was a window, and the surgeon who basically saved my life, I could see him in the window with a load of people watching, and I'm saying to Jane, I'm going to die tonight. Pulled all my face stuff off and everything, just complete. And it's such a horrific experience.
Yeah. When you look back and you speak to your partner about it, how does she recall it?
She was like, you were like, as my brother was coming as well, and I'd be saying like things like, they're out to get me, and whispering and shh. And now it's funny because we kind of look back with humour on it in a way, because it was, when you think about it, there is a funny element to it, the things I was seeing. And some people say, like, they've seen like a Bengal tiger in the room. No, I didn't have that, but that's what people feedback are, and it's so vivid that you actually, like, even to this day, I look back at some of it and I don't know what was real and what wasn't real. Obviously I know but that's how real it felt at the time.
Yeah. So that's 8 weeks, and you come out.
Yeah.
And what's next?
So I go see the oncologist about the next steps. What had happened then is, in the emergency surgery, I'd had the cancer removed out of my bowel, which was a positive.
Yeah.
I'd had a stoma fitted, which took me, again, that was something just to adjust with my mindset and how I dealt with that. But that was fine. Went to see the oncologist, still had cancer in my liver. Had scans, and then was called in to see him, and he basically said, like, look, we've had some bad news. The liver cancer's grown, and you've now got cancer in your stomach lining, in your peritoneum. You're restricted on what chemotherapy options you can have because you're cardiotoxic, so we have to 50% of them are off the table, but we'll try it on this. The success rates are brilliant. And being honest, if it's unsuccessful, you're going to be looking at months left to live. And I was like, well, wow, I've just battled and come through all this, and now I'm being told I'm going to have months left to live if it's unsuccessful. And again, that was massively low point, because I literally built myself up, and it was like, come on, let's get this next stage done. So to be told, like, again, your chances of being here and he wouldn't put a figure on. I pushed him and said, how many months am I looking at? And he's like, I can't tell you that, but you're definitely looking at months and not years.
Are you surprised if you look back at 35-year-old Danny and look back at this? Are you surprised how much mental strength you could find?
Yeah, but I always believe that you don't know how tough you are until you're put into situations. Like, a lot of people say that to me and say, like, how do you deal with this? What's thrown at you? But I think a lot of people do and would in the same way. And that's what even if you're not dealing with a cancer diagnosis, everyone's got mental strength and mental toughness, and it's just finding that within yourself. And everyone's got it, and it's why I'm so keen to tell my story, because I want sometimes people just to sit up and say, you know what, he's right. You know what, I'm putting this off because I don't want to do it, because maybe I'm nervous, or I might have to put me out of my comfort zone. But why? I can do it, and so on. So that's one of the key things of me speaking so openly, really, about my journey.
Yeah. And you get through that part, and we're still in the first year of your journey, I think. We're still in 2019.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's all hit me within probably 6 months of being diagnosed, and then I had chemotherapy. And it was really then when this positive, I got into a support group with other people who were having bowel cancer. So, for instance, like Deborah James, bowel babe, who sadly passed away recently, she was in the group. A lady called Kelly Smith, she was
Where
inspirational.
Did you find that group, by the way? Where did you find it?
It was a bowel cancer group, but it was on Facebook, but it was actually, I'd seen, Kelly was from Manchester, and I'd seen like all these stories about the great things she was doing. So I just reached out to her, and she said, come in this group, it's amazing. And that's one of the things I would say is, anyone who's going through anything, especially when you're stage 4 cancer, get into a support group that knows what you're going through and also knows what the options are out there, because it literally is life or death. So there was one thing that I learned, was a particular surgery that the Christie did called HIPEC. So if I wasn't in that group, I would have just been listening to my oncologist at the time. And it kind of brings me nicely back into that story, because I had the chemotherapy, and after the first scan, I went in and they were like, the cancer's shrunk, and the chemotherapy's doing the job. And it was like, great, and your mindset. And we went and had another 3 cycles, scanned again, and then I said to my oncologist at the time, I need to be referred to the Christie for this HIPEC, because it's focused on the stomach line and its operation and so on. And he was just very reluctant. It was like, no, I think chemotherapy, he's got his oncology. Chemotherapy is the best. It's working, it's shrinking. The easiest thing to do would be to sit on chemotherapy, not go down the route of a risky operation. Well, I forced the issue and eventually got referred to the Christie, and had 2 major surgeries there, one on my liver when they removed 75% of my liver. And then I eventually had the HIPEC surgery, where they removed the cancer from your stomach lining, put chemotherapy in at about 40 to 45 degrees, and wash it round your stomach. Revolutionary, and it's done a lot of people good. And that's where I got to at that point, And you're talking a good 12 months on from where we were.
So you've got some positive news now. What's life like for you at that point? Day-to-day life. Yeah,
so what had kind of evolved was, when I was actually at sepsis in my hospital bed, I wanted to do a bowel cancer awareness game, a football charity game. So while I was recovering from sepsis in the bed, I was organising this charity game, and thankfully I got out the day before. So I had things in my head to actually give back and create awareness and ultimately fundraise. So when I got when I see the oncologist and I was told that I had 6 months or months left to live, friends then turned up with TEAMDDB shirts on. So what kind of evolved from that was a fundraising charity And that kind of, as well as working for Digital, that kind of took over and really gave me a positive view on it. And obviously I can come on to where we're at now with TEAMDDB, but that was my life. It was very much like positivity, helping others wherever I could, just really, really giving back, because what ultimately I'd seen was I wanted a legacy from something so negative. I wanted to turn a negative into a positive, and so on. Yeah.
And day to day, then, do you start being able to go back to work at some point? We're in 2020 now, so are you starting to get back to work? And
never really stopped working, really. It's always been like, if I've had surgery, let's say it's taken me 6 weeks to recover, straight back to work, because what I was doing in the early stages was I'd be like, for example, I'd say to a friend, do you want to go out for a coffee or do you want to go for lunch? And in my head, I was thinking, I need to do this because I don't know how long I've got left to live, and this might be the last time I get to see that person. And I got to the point where I thought, I've got to change that mindset. I've got to get back to normality. I've got to live. Nobody knows what's going to happen down the line. Nobody knows my journey. Somebody can tell you you've got 3 months left to live, but that doesn't mean you've got 3 months left to live. Everybody's cancer story is different. Don't get defined by stats and statistics.
Yeah.
Just live your best life, and as I said, try and live as normal as possible. Obviously, you have challenges because you get tired through chemotherapy, or you have adverse reactions. Surgery is obviously difficult to recover from.
Yeah.
But as much as you can, try and be normal as possible.
I've always thought like my mind is most dangerous when it's empty. I'm better off just doing stuff. That's when my anxiety comes.
Yeah.
I'll get anxiety. I'll have to control my anxiety more on holiday, for example, because I haven't got time this afternoon to deal with it. My mind will be full. So you very quickly, as soon as you could, found yourself repurposed, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It was that thing of doing positive things and doing positive things for others, and it was infectious, and it was something that, like, when I'm sitting in a chemotherapy chair and I can be on my phone and I can be making a difference, it was giving me validation for what had happened, that keeping my mind occupied given me purpose and like I said, legacy, and all these keywords that often get used, but it's so true. Keeping my mind busy almost parked all the negativity and the rubbish, and my situation is that of, things can change very quickly for me from where I am now, and as I say, I can get into that, but in 3 months' time, I could be told all the cancer's back, it's spread, it's all over the place, and it could be doom and gloom again. Yeah. But while I've got the opportunity to make a difference, I'll certainly try my best.
Almost everybody's going to be affected by cancer. Some of it's going to be direct and some of it's going to be indirect. What are the kind of things, even now, either today or when you're looking back, what are the kind of things that you wanted from your support team, from your partners or your family and your friends, and what are the things you didn't want?
I mean, normality is a key one. It's just trying to live your life day to day, and there'd be times when I'd go around and I'd have a cup of tea with my mum and dad, and there'd be questions around cancer, and it was just like, park that. I don't want to talk about that. Let's just talk about what you're doing at the weekend, or what was the footy score, or how's my niece doing, and that's what you want. You want normality. You don't want to be going to the football, like I'll go to the game, and I don't want to be spending my time talking about it whilst it's there. Where I used to go, I'd have a drink. I don't drink anymore. So there's like little, not even negatives, but things like that happen, and people are aware of that. I just want to go and talk about, like, where's Ronaldo off to? You don't want to be focusing on, how's it going? Where you're up to, and so normality is key, but and just trying to be positive around that person, and not so negative. But as I say, a lot of that comes from you yourself.
That's a fair point. So bring us up to date then. So that was like 2020. What's it been like for the last couple of years?
So I had the hip back surgery. I had 9 months clear scans of showing no evident disease.
Just explain that, because it's remarkable, really, that we're all going to have some kind of, it's going to affect us in some ways, and yet it's like one of those things, unless you've got it, you think, oh, I'm going to get that in like 30 or 40 years or 50 or 60. I don't need to think about that.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing, really, how little people like me, layman people, know so little about actually what's going on. So what does that even mean?
I mean, it's so important. It's such an important point, because one of the things that I was exactly the same. You think cancer's cancer. There's levels of cancer in terms of stage 2, 3, 4, 4 being the worst you can possibly have, which means it spreads to other organs. So one of the things I often get is, when are you going to ring the bell? And I'll never ring the bell. Like, someone who's stage 4 will never ring the bell, because treatment's never ended. The chances of someone being cured from stage 4 is very minimal. So when I say I've shown no evident disease or no visible cancer, that just means on the scans that I've got or had, that there was no cancer visible, but it doesn't mean it's not there. It's just very small, so the scan can only pick up so much. But the chances are the cancer is there in your body, but the chemotherapy is managing it. Where if you're like stage 2, like I was saying before with my mum, it was confined to the bowel, it was cut out, it's never returned. You know, if you have chemotherapy, you might have 6 cycles of chemotherapy just to clean up.
Yeah.
You ring the bell,
and
then quite often, you know, touch wood for a lot of people, it never returns. So that's why it's integral that people catch cancer at the stage 2 level, in opposed to spread to other organs and so on. So when I say I'm showing no evident disease, it doesn't mean the cancer's not there. It just means that at the moment it's not visible on scans. It's the best place it can be, and the chemotherapy is ultimately doing the job.
And you get that, you're getting them regularly, so that must give you renewed hope, I guess. And
and that's the thing. The people ultimately just assume that cancer is a death sentence, but with advancements, with chemotherapy, immunotherapy, people can actually now manage cancer and live with cancer. In terms of, obviously it's tough because you're having those treatments, but they can manage it for years and years. And I know people who were in with the same support group who are 5 years on from, 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road, who just have what you call maintenance chemotherapy, and it's just keeping the cancer at bay. You have chemotherapy on a 2-week basis, and it's just never ever come back, and that's got to kind of what I hope, because for me, there'll never be a point now in my life where I don't have treatment or chemotherapy, and I'll have that until it stops working, until I've gone through options. But that's not even at the forefront of my mind. I've very much trained my mind that until someone tells me otherwise, I'm just going to live. And obviously I'm going to have tough times. I'm going to have side effects, but I'm going to live the best life I can.
And so today you'll go in on a Monday, you'll have chemotherapy on that one day, and that lasts you for a couple of weeks, and then you keep returning, and that's you're on repeat.
I mean, that's kind of how it works for me. Every chemotherapy treatment's different, but so I'll go in on a Monday, 4 or 5 hour infusion of the drugs, leave, and then not back for 2 weeks. In the middle of that, I'll have some steroids just to keep me lifted. It's obviously got I'm on a lot of medication. But and that's kind of how it goes. And then typically what they'll do is after 6 cycles, which is typically 3 months, they'll scan you, tell you the results. If the results are good, you'll carry on the same thing. I mean, I'm currently on a 6-week break from treatment, which has been great, because I was battered, to be honest with you, and I'm starting to feel normal. So it's frustrating to go back on Monday. But it's just what you've got to do. It's the world that I'm in now, and I don't get downbeat about it. You just kind of take it on the chin, and you've got to get on with things.
And so from a stage of, you might not last this operation, you might do 6 months, then this operation, then, through the night you're not going to make it, and then it's this one's 3 months. You're now living in a stage of what? In mindset is just you've got to go for chemo every 2 weeks, but other than that, you just crack on.
It's such a bizarre thing. I find that in terms of my mindset, I'm in the strongest point of my life, and possibly despite everything, I'm possibly in the happiest and most content part of my life, with such a negative hanging over me, such a dark cloud hanging over me. It's bizarre. It's certain things resonate.
That is your mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, certain things resonate. Like, I think something I often say, but 96, 97% of what you worry about actually doesn't happen. So why worry about it? And again, I've challenged, like I said, I don't don't get too nervous anymore with stuff. With like, I'll only deal with stuff as it comes to me and lands on my instead of worrying about it. I'm just so keen to like I said, everybody's got an inner strength, and it's just finding it. Unfortunately for me, it took me to get stage 4 cancer for me to find that inner strength.
Yeah.
But as I said, I'm just so comfortable in my own kind of being, and the charity work is something that was, as I say, it's something that I think was my calling card really, and TEAMDDB is the legacy, and obviously so much good's come from that really.
And so let's talk about TEAMDDB. So it's what is it? A series of like challenges that you do? I noticed she was doing a bit of Strictly Dancing or whatever at the weekend.
Absolutely. So it started off, we just wanted to, like I say, the charity football game and friends did Pretty Muddy, and we got to like £10,000, and I thought, you know what, I can run with this. I'll put it on social media, and then a lot of people were I was very public about my story, and people were not buying into is not the right word, but people were inspired by what we were doing. So they do fundraising challenges, and they do it under the kind of TEAMDDB umbrella, but we'd be raising money for, you know, Maggie's or Clatterbridge or the Christie or whoever it may well be, local charities. We initially did some stuff for your cancer researchers, but I wanted something where you could physically touch it and impact on local people. And then that evolved into, I started to do what we call brand acts of kindness. So what I saw throughout my journey was, if somebody did, you know, if I had a nice day out or whatever, it lifted my spirits. So what we started to do is identify people within the community who had a tough time. We wanted to make them smile. He may have had a medical condition. He may have gone above or beyond for someone. And I say we've done about 50 of them now, where we've sent them out on a day out, we've sent them out for a meal or whatever it may well be, and it's making a real impact. And we've eventually evolved where we were just fundraisers, and it was just a very loose thing, to now where we've most recently become a CIC, and the eventual thing will be for us to then evolve. There's obviously a lot more to go through, but eventually to become a foundation, and that's where, you know, it'll leave me a legacy. And we've raised, I think it's we're up to about £105,000 now for the local community, and that's all come off the back of me having stage 4 cancer, which I'm hugely proud about, and it's very fulfilling, and like I say, it gives me a bit of justification for why what's happened to me has happened really.
Sure. In terms of, you just mentioned before, you don't have nerves anymore. So it allows you to throw yourself into stuff like the dancing. How did it go?
It went all right. Yeah, it was early. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't say I wouldn't get completely, as I was about to step on stage. There was a few little leg jangles, but yeah, it was real. Like I say, I would really encourage people to challenge themselves and put themselves into uncomfortable situations. And the dancing was something like, I can't dance. I think I had 6 lessons. If you watch the video, you'll see that I can't dance. And I think Shirley Ballas, who was judging, was a bit overly kind because she saw my journey on the screen before.
How many was doing it?
There was about 14 of us.
All right.
Yeah, and I say it was all for Maggie's, and that, I think I raised about £4,000 for Maggie's off the back. So that's the bigger picture, and that's what it's all about. And if I look silly for a few minutes on stage, but we raise £4,000 from it, then I'll do that every day of the week. So
yeah. And so for the future, then what's next for you?
I mean, I take it day by day. I can only live 3 months by 3 months, every scan to scan. But yeah, keep growing TEAMDDB, keep working as much as I can, and giving back. I think that's the key thing, is in today's world, I think we do need to give back and look out for each other more. And it doesn't matter what you're going through, you can always kind of do that, and you can use a platform that's been given to you for the better of others. You know, and that's kind of what I've tried to do with where I'm at. And so to grow TEAMDDB, it's been amazing. Like, I've got the people I've met and friends I've made, like, you know, well-known faces. You know, we've had people like Quan Matter, Sir Alex Ferguson. I'm very friendly with Quan now, and but a lot of people say, oh, you got his number in your phone, and often I always come back and say, yeah, but I'd rather just be Danny, who worked for Digital, who was head of sales 5 years ago, than where I am now. Yeah. But they're the nice things that have come off the back of it, really. You know, good relationships, and people have been so heartwarming to my journey and my story, really. So it's been nice.
Well, listen, you should keep sharing your story. As I said before, when I started the podcast, it was about trying trying to open up stories for people to listen to and pick parts. And there's about 1 million lessons in there from yours. So I really appreciate you coming in today. Really appreciate your story. Inspirational. And that's the end of the podcast today. But thank you so much and best of luck.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, mate.
Thank you very much. Thank you.